There's like also benefit to the spontaneity. There's benefit to the not knowing everything. We have more opportunities now to spend time making optimal decision. And I think that has its drawbacks too. Same could be true for the time we spend researching, the time we spend planning.
This is a two-part episode. If you want to check out the first part, listen to the previous episode of Time Billionaires.
And I think as a result of all that, we end up in a situation where it's both message to us to be present and also easier not to be present. And I mean, that's a tough combination.
It is. And so many things that feel like a good use of time to not be present as an investment for doing more research on everything. It has diminishing returns, but it can feel reckless not to do it for your kid, especially in an age of misinformation and conflicting information.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly right. And we have, it's like in the same way that there's that many more opportunities to spend in frictionless ways. There's that many more opportunities now. You're absolutely right. There's that many more opportunities now to spend time making quote unquote the optimal decision. And I think, I mean, and that has its drawbacks too. There's like these asymptotes of perfection we think about when it comes to just any sort of task. But I think the same could be true for the time we spend researching, the time we spend planning, and it's like, it's interesting. One thing that I didn't talk about in my book, and I really wish I had now, is that there's like also benefit to the spontaneity. There's benefit to the not knowing everything. There's benefit to the like, I mean, I would never do it's funny, I was talking to a friend recently, or uh it was actually my hair cutter. And she said she just got a trip. She has family in Paris. She and her sister
Cool.
went to Paris. So they're in their 50s. And I said, "Oh, where'd you stay?" And she said, "Well, we're not the type of people that like to plan that out. So we get there, we plan it out." And I was like, oh, oh my God. Like imagine going. Now they don't neither has kids, so like that may have made things easier in a way. But the idea of traveling all the way to Europe or anywhere and not knowing where you're gonna stay, but using some of your precious time to do it sounds outlandish to me. And yet I think both of them got some utility of sorts of like the spontaneity and like let's see where things take us. And like there's gotta be some value there too.
Sure. Yeah, and the benefit is saying, I don't know which neighborhood I'll feel like being in, but let me go see. Yeah, you're right. Like they're optimizing for not wasting pre-planning time before the trip, stressing out, putting energy in places they may not want it. Whereas you or I might say, I want to not waste time in Paris on these questions or shrink my options if I could have booked somewhere I wanted in advance. And then now it's not an option because it's sold out or anything.
Exactly. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, you've I think this is a good example, but even the being present as parents example, the pre-commitment comes up a lot on this show of once you have 2 minutes between tasks, it's too late to decide what you want to do with those 2 minutes because it's up. But the pre-commitment to being present at your son's friend's birthday party or deciding, I do this every Friday, what do I want more of is a question I ask, and those become my micro moment categories for the week. And then just write down like the week of whatever. For me, it was this week is physical movement. So it's just 10 push-ups, 90-second plank, 3-minute shavasana. So if I have 90 seconds, that's it. That's just get up and do a 90-second plank or whatever it is. But the pre-commitment in advance, it can help with the decision making. You talk about hot and cold states. So if we're in a hot state, like stress between meetings, it's too late. You can't then just make the same rational decision as you could in a cold state.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great, that's really interesting. I've never thought about applying pre-commitment and the sort of hot cold states to this sort of like time planning, but you're so right about that. And it's, the idea there about the hot states and cold states is like it there's a disconnect. It's current and future selves, and my current self right now could be in a cold state, and it might make it easier to plan for a hot state and to say, well, when I'm in that stressful moment, I'm gonna do a plank and 10 push-ups or sit-ups or whatever. But at the same time, there can be another disconnect, which is that my cold self can say, "Oh, I'm going to do these things." And like when I'm stressed, I'm like, "Why did
Who is
that guy
that
make this
person?
plan?
Yeah.
Who was that guy?" Right?
Yeah.
And that is, one of the reasons why commitment devices that really try to constrain your behavior can be so effective, right? So, I mean, we know that, if I attach some sort of punishment, and I put that in quotes because I'm not saying I need to, bring myself into law enforcement, but I mean, if I owe my friend $100 at the end of the week, if I haven't stayed true to my word, like that might be the type of thing that just puts me over the edge to say, okay, maybe I will do this thing that I said I was going to do. I have a line of research now with one of my students, Megan Weber, and what we're doing is looking at the fact that commitment devices are really effective. It turns out that like they're really effective at getting people to do the things that they say that they want to do, or not do the things that they say that they don't want to do. The problem is people don't adopt them that often. So like there's one of the most effective treatments for alcoholism is this pill called antabuse. I'm sure you've heard about it. I think I even
You
yeah,
wrote
and
about it.
it's
Yep.
like
Mhm.
yeah, I wrote about it. And it's like makes you sick if you drink and lasts in your bloodstream for 4 days. Not that many people sign up for it because this
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, but the thing that I loved about that I highlighted and pulled out was that the reason people do try it for any length of time was because it's easier to make one decision a day than 25 decisions a day. So if you have this one decision, I will take this pill, I'm not going to decide 25 times a day, not to scroll. Social media is the equivalent, I thought, with time of if you can decide I'm not the kind of person who's going to spend 5 minutes. I think there's a parallel with time there from a commitment device, but also with the anchoring of a dollar amount. You talked about with a Groupon going into an expensive suit shop and deciding you're only there for the Groupon deal. The salesperson talks to you about an $18,000 suit. You're like, I'd never spend $18,000 on a suit. Aren't I so responsible walking out? Was it with twice what you planned to spend or something like that? I think that
Yeah.
happens with time too. Of, oh, I mean, yeah, it's not so bad to. I didn't waste 2 hours scrolling Reddit, so just 5 minutes is fine. It just feels like a smaller anchor of, well, what was I going to do with those 5 minutes? You could have called your grandparents, done 10 push ups, stepped outside, any number of things, but it doesn't feel like we could have done anything else with those micro moments.
I love that example. I'd never thought about this the concept of anchoring within our own, basically what you're talking about is like this like self anchor, where you're like, well, I could have been on for 2 hours. I could have spent, I mean, I actually couldn't have spent, but I could have spent $18,000, but I only spent 300 or whatever it is. And you're like, it's our ways of tricking ourselves with these almost irrelevant anchor points of sorts, right? But I do think you're right that that's part of the problem there is it's like easy to wash away any of the other, the little behaviors because oh well, it wasn't 2 hours. But what if I added it up over the course of the week and now it's 2 hours staring at me, right? That's problematic. And I think, just to come back to it, this idea of the commitment device is interesting because sometimes people don't do them because they don't want to end up in a situation where they have to punish themselves. But sometimes we don't adopt them because we say, I don't need that. I can handle it. It's like I can, the extreme, I like if I want to quit, I'll quit, so, but what's interesting here, what my student Megan and I are doing is we're basically taking it away from the self. We're saying, and it's not about you, whether you can or can't do it. It's that there's going to be obstacles and barriers in your way. And have you, we'll ask people, have you ever tried to quit social media before? Yeah. What got in the way, from stop, what made it hard to quit? It's like, well, my friends are talking about there's all these things. Then I turn on my phone and it's there. That's not about you. You're not lazy. You don't have poor self-control. You're not bad. There's these obstacles out there and they make it hard for you. So if you think you're going to face obstacles in the future, and you probably will, then it may make sense to adopt some sort of commitment device. And that, what we're finding is that sort of framing is the type of thing that gets people to like say, oh, you're right. Maybe I should check myself. Maybe I should put some plan into place because it's not me. It's just that there's other things out there that are going to pull my attention away.
It's fascinating. I think that's such a good idea. It makes perfect sense as I think about my own life. And when I took your class, we talked about this after one of your lectures that I thought was awesome. But it's hard to cold turkey. I think especially for the current generation of students, they are missing out if they're not plugged
Totally.
into the same things. But what I found, and I've shared with some people who found it helpful, is a similar motion of, okay, I have the instinct to take my phone out and scroll. So I will take my phone out and scroll the photos on my own phone or Goodreads for what my friends are reading because I have this motion that I need to break. And going cold turkey from I used to scroll in every moment to I never touch my phone is hard. That's a big deviation.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you're absolutely right. It's a big deviation and it's not sustainable. But you're right. It's like I need something, I need a distraction of sorts. That's a positive distraction. I mean, it is funny because I look at my kids who don't have phones yet, and I'm like, man, you're like me 20 years ago. You just sit there, and it's like also probably why they complain about being bored more. They're kids; they don't have control of their
Which is
time
good for
necessarily.
them
But
though, because it's good for their
I
executive
mean,
functioning. Yeah.
absolutely. But I mean, part of me wishes, like, I do feel like I'm like, oh, I wish I could throw it away, put it down, But I
Swap
like
it
that idea. I like
for
that
a book
swap. That's
or
great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same for the procrastination motion, at least for me. What breaks it is the same metric. Not, I'll work out on the treadmill now because summer's coming, I want to be confident. How much will I enjoy this workout to how much will I enjoy indulging in chips on the couch? If it's the same metric of I can still put some common measurement of I actually will enjoy these push-ups instead, when it's different of enjoyment in the future to pain now, my brain breaks there of it just isn't through line enough of my future self to my current self's emotions.
That is, first up, that's interesting that you are motivated by push-ups now versus couch now. To me, that would not be an easy one, but like part of what you're doing there, so you're putting things in the same metric, but you're also bringing the rewards to the present. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
so you could, in other words, you could say, well, I'm going to work out now because I'll feel more confident this summer, something that'll happen in however many months. Or I'm going to work out now because as soon as I'm done with the workout, I'm going to feel I'm going to feel like I've gotten out my excess energy. I'm going to feel good. I'm going to feel more relaxed, etc. Or even during it, right? So I mean, I was joking, but like maybe during it feels good. But what you've done there is brought the rewards to the present, which we know is a really strong way to motivate people to do something that also, by the way, has future benefits, right? So if I keep doing that, then like I will, as a side effect, feel more confident this summer, whatever it might be. But it's not the main effect. It's not the main driver.
Yeah. And then that compounding, you set that rule for yourself. It becomes a common motion. You introduced me to this idea really recently of an AI digital twin, which I had never heard of. I think it has so much potential. Will you share what that is?
Totally. So I mean, so the concept. Okay, so there's a couple ways to think about this, but like the main way of thinking about this is an AI digital twin is essentially like an AI agent that is created off of a person's beliefs, personality, even demographics, and so on. So like a classic example of this. Some researchers basically, let's say they surveyed. I'll just make up some numbers. Imagine they took 1,000 people and they gave them tons of questionnaires, things like about their personality, their preferences, their value propositions, their demographics, et cetera. And then they basically say, okay, so like, let's say that you, Rebecca, did, a series of questionnaires. And then they'll say, okay, we're going to use the answers that you gave to all these questionnaires to create now like AI Rebecca. And this is your digital twin. And in theory, this should now behave and respond in the way that you do. And to validate this, what the researchers have done is they'll say, okay, now I'm going to give a new questionnaire to you, real Rebecca, and that same questionnaire to AI Rebecca. And what they found is that the correlation between the answers that, the real person and the AI twin gave were like highly correlated.
Amazing.
Um, It's wild, right? And now, I mean, you can think about from a marketing perspective. Imagine if I'm trying to figure out, what's the best way to position something for you. Well, I don't have to go and find you. I can ask your digital twin. And no, I mean, like let me just be really clear. Like anything in marketing, I think there's enormously positive consequences that could come from this as well as negative ones, right? So, I mean, in the wrong hands, imagine like a political group using this to
Oh boy.
sway
Mhm.
behavior in a way. I don't need to pull that thread too hard, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, Now my research team and I used the concept of digital twins, but not for like AI Rebecca now, but like future Rebecca.
So
So we
cool.
basically have you answer a series of questions that creates, it's like the backstory that fills in for a future you. And then you can essentially have a conversation with that future you. Now, right now we've, primarily done this over like texting chats. But for some experimental reasons, like this is a group I'm collaborating with at MIT. They've created a version of this where imagine you go into a room and like you sit there and like you kind of stare back at like you stare at you AIU and you have a whole conversation like you were sitting in a room with your grandmother, but it's not your grandmother. It's you at age 75 or 80. And I mean,
The
what's
decision
crazy.
making power, right? Like if you're stuck on what will future me prefer or want at some inflection point, that can be really stifling and having a digital twin be huge.
I think so. And like, to be clear, it's not a time travel machine. So I could say, well, what would happen if I were to move to the Bay Area from LA? And my AI twin could talk to me about his feelings and what he thinks, but it's just a projection, obviously. But I think what that does is it creates kind of an imagination aid, an imagination scaffolding of sorts, so that my present day decisions are less of the sort of like constant you know, iteration on the same idea over and over and over again, rumination of it, but rather like, well, let me actually play this out. Like it's like almost like cognitive behavioral therapy. Let's like not
Mhm.
go to the most extreme end or go to the most extreme end, but let's just have a conversation about it rather than like cycling over and over and over again.
It's huge. Yeah, the cycling of what are the consequences? How will I feel? I think is where a lot of people get stuck. Without an AI digital twin, which most of us don't have right now, given our tendency to discount the future, etc., what's the smallest thing someone could do today in just a few minutes to make tomorrow better?
Um, I do, at the risk of sounding too detailed, I do think that one exercise at least that can be really valuable is pick a time point, whether it's 5 years in the future or 10, a year, and write a letter from that future self to who you are now. And I want to be clear to emphasize because I think, the normal thing is, oh, write a letter to your future self. Problem with doing that is that you stay anchored in the present. If I was to write a letter to myself in 10 years, it does get me thinking about what will life be like in 10 years. But it gets me thinking about it really from the standpoint of right now. It's like, connect with your date by telling them all about you. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, but what if I write a letter and it's like from my future self? Now, to be fair, I still have to jump ahead. I still have to mentally time travel. I still am living in today's world. But my suspicion is that it helps us think a little bit more deeply about, who we want to be, how we want to spend our time, which could be the type of moment that like gets you to like try to change the way things are going right now in your life, whatever that means exactly. Or maybe you say, hey, things are actually going pretty well the way that I think about it. Like I'm going to stick with the status quo and be more grateful for it. And that even that exercise I think is enormously valuable because in everything we're talking about, getting stuck in the present and so on, sometimes we can also get stuck in the present and only focus on the things that are problematic about right now and fail to step out and say, oh my gosh, all things being equal, it's pretty good, right? So
Right.
In certain circumstances, I recognize we're at a hard point
Right.
in history, but yeah,
Yeah, or how small will some of the things that I'm stressing about now feel from the perspective of myself reading this back?
100%,
Yeah. Thanks,
100%.
Hal.
Yeah.
I've loved this conversation. Is there anything you wanted to share I didn't give you a chance to?
No, I mean, I really think this has been a great conversation. I guess, yeah, okay, one thing would be, this conversation is not meant to say, oh, we should prioritize the future self or we should prioritize the current self. I think more than anything, it's like, how do you sort of smooth out the satisfaction, utility, whatever an economist might say, over time? And that also doesn't mean, oh, balance everything. Because it may be that there's times when like you do have to like procrastinate and act hyperactively and be very future focused and miss the present. And because ultimately that'll be good. Or there may be some times where it's like, yeah, I'm going to skip out on the things I was supposed to do because I'm really loving this moment with my kid right now or my spouse right now or whatever it is. The problem arises when you only do one of those versus the other. Or if you have whiplash, you're constantly going back and forth. So I think it's really a matter of saying, how can I be intentional about this? How can I say, yeah, it makes sense now to spend the money on a family trip? I need to be okay with the fact that I've just taken money away from my future self, but I've given him some memories, etc. But if I do it out of inertia and then I get there and I'm like, oh, this was a bad idea. Like maybe we should skip dinner. Like then you're not doing anybody a service, right? So it's really about being intentional with how you spend your time, between present and future selves.
So true. And then not shaming yourself for whatever that decision was made.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah, yeah.